the richest man in history who lived in the early 1300s, and our economy today. How do they relate? Hello and happy Monday. Hopefully, everyone's off to a good start of the week. The Fed is due to meet tomorrow, and the expectations is that the Fed will raise the Fed's funds rate by another 0.25%. It's amazing to see the spectrum of opinions on what the Fed should be doing when they announce on February 1st. Many people, they want to raise the Fed funds rate, right? Many people want them to leave the Fed's funds rate alone. They think that it's fine where it's at. And surprisingly, some people are saying to actually cut the Fed's funds rate, that the Fed has gone too far. So why is February 1st so important? Because it's going to tell us what the Fed is thinking about inflation. Have we gotten ahead of this, or are we still got more to go? What do we got to do? What does the Fed think we need to do? But what was the cause of inflation? Why did it rise to 9.1% last year? And why didn't the Fed see this coming, right? Why were they all of a sudden blindsided? And how do I know that the Fed was blindsided? Stand by.
Inflation concerns for now are to the downside. The risks are to the downside, not to the upside. We see prices moving down. That's because in a lot of parts of the economy, people are cutting prices.
The reason this inflation thing always happens throughout history is because history seemingly never fails in repeating itself. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Mansa Musa, the richest person in history. Some say that in today's money, he's worth at least $400 billion. And others would say that the man was our first trillionaire. By all accounts, though, he seemed like a very good man. He was a devout Muslim who most definitely cared about his people. In 1324 AD, he made the mandatory trip all Muslims are supposed to make at least once in their life. They're supposed to travel to Mecca. So he traveled from Mali, Africa to Mecca in Saudi Arabia. This trip in all took him over 2 years to complete. Part of the reason it took him so long is because everywhere he would go, he wanted to build another school. He wanted to build another mosque, another library, anything and everything to help out the poor. As a matter of fact, this man brought billions of dollars worth of gold, in today's money obviously, brought billions of dollars worth of gold with the purpose of giving it all away to the poor, right? An actual wealthy person taking it upon himself to give the poor exactly what we all want, money. And now, cue to my favorite economist. Milton Friedman famously said, inflation is caused by too much money chasing after too few goods, which causes prices to rise. Exhibit A. On Mansa Musa's way back home from Mecca, he was surprised to find out that the people were even poorer than before he ended up giving them the gold. Why? Because the gold was everywhere. Everyone had gold. Now it's not so lucrative. Its value dropped to almost nothing. Think about it. If you're selling a loaf of bread for 2 pinches of gold, right? 2 pinches of gold dust pretty much. And you're selling it for that price because that's what the open market will give you, then fine. It is what it is. That's economics. But now imagine everyone not having, 2 pinches of gold laying around, but everyone having gold bars laying around, right? Why would the bread seller sell the bread for 2 pinches when nobody cares about 2 pinches of gold anymore? It's not worth anyone's time. Now, for that same bread, it's going to cost you a whole handful of gold, right? So prices went up on everything because of the actions of Mansa. This literally destroyed the region's economies for over a decade. And to try and solve this problem, Mansa tried to borrow, not buy, but borrow as much gold as he could. And he did it with high interest rates on purpose. You heard it right. He decided to borrow and accepted a high interest rate to try and save the economy. Doesn't some of this sound a little familiar? Trying to reduce the money flow in order to curb inflation. Can anyone remember back to 79 when inflation was at 14%? Yeah, me neither. I wasn't born yet. So let me just tell you how they solved that problem. First, President Carter had to admit the government was spending way too much money on social programs. Just like Mansa, his heart was in the right place. But just like Mansa, he realized he had to cut back on money flow by sadly canceling many social programs. Then, the new Fed chairman, Paul Volcker, took over. When he took over, he raised the Fed's funds rate to up to 20%. It made it almost impossible to borrow money at that rate and still be profitable. Think about it. If you make a 15% profit, but it costs you 20% to borrow the money, you're basically out of business, right? And now history is repeating itself. Back in December 2020, the first round of stimulus checks went out. The government was giving away free money. On top of that, people couldn't even get evicted, right? If they wanted, you couldn't evict anyone. They didn't have to pay rent. You didn't have to make your mortgage payment if you didn't want to. You didn't have to pay credit card bills. Hell, you still don't have to make school loan payments, right? That's not even owed yet, still from the pandemic. And to be fair, most people agreed to the first round of stimulus checks. Nobody knew what to expect, right? So it's like, okay, let's help everyone right now. But there was definitely a bigger fight for the second and third round. Some said yes to send money to everyone. Just let's do it. And obviously that's what we did. And some said, hey, let's only give money to those who were actually hurt, who can actually prove that the pandemic affected them negatively in a financial way. If you guys remember, the travel and entertainment industry took a bloodbath, but the rest of the economy was doing pretty good. Like most people I know, I made more during the pandemic than ever in my life. Even though arts, entertainment, recreation, and food services account for only 4% of GDP, only 4% of the economy, we still decided to hand out money to 100% of the people. Oh, and by the way, many people deferred their bills. So first, you're making money. Most people, if you're not in that sector, you're making money. Second, you're not having to pay back money, right? Because you're not paying back your car loan, you're not paying back your mortgage. No judgment. That's human nature. If you don't have to pay it, you don't pay it. And third, the government is printing money, right? You're making money, you don't have to pay back money, and the government's printing money to send it to you. And here we are. We're about to pay for the actions of the last 2 years. And now, most sectors are going to be feeling this versus just mostly the entertainment sector. This isn't magic, folks. It's basic economics. Yet still, we always repeat the lessons of the past. All of a sudden, this Russia-Ukraine business scares me a little bit more. Nevertheless, we all must do what we need to do in order to move our families past this next year. Why, you ask? Because life's not meant to be. It's meant to create. Too strong.